Hi guys, so this is one that a lot of people have difficulty with, and that's creating buttonholes, and in this case creating buttonholes on the edge of a collar on a shirt. I'll show you a close-up of this, but a lot of shirts have got these in them, so naturally you want to remove those before you do anything, okay? So there'll be one on each end. Most shirts don't. So I've got this client, I think he's bought me 9 shirts to do. He likes to have a little buttonhole here, and then I will stitch a button onto there so that he can do that up. He likes it to be nice and neat, and he wears a tie. So I'm going to show you how to do that. It's, to me, like doing buttonholes. If you're having trouble trying to make buttonholes, the only thing I can suggest to you is practice, practice, practice. I sew my buttons on using the machine, as well as obviously doing the buttonholes on the machine. Now, every machine is different. I have a Janome and I've got a brother, so I use those 2 machines a lot. I remember way back in the very beginning when I started doing clothes alterations, and the lady I was working for at the time had made all of these shirts, and I think there were 40 or 50. And so then she said to me, "Jude, could you do the buttonholes for me please and put the buttons on?" And I thought, oh, I remember thinking, no, I don't want to do this, because I hadn't perfected a buttonhole, right? So I was probably as paranoid about it as you might be feeling if you're scared of buttonholes. But I can tell you that by the time I got to the last shirt, and I got a feeling there was 50, by the time I got to the last shirt, I was doing them literally with my eyes closed. And I mean, obviously I didn't have my eyes closed, but I'm just saying, like, practice is everything. So if you've got something that you're really not good at, like buttonholes, just get some fabric and play around with it until you're really comfortable with it, like I was. And then this kind of thing, it's not an issue, you know, it's easy and you don't have to break out in a sweat. So I'll show you how I do, I'll just do one to show you, and then hopefully you'll get on your machine and you'll be doing buttonholes really easily. So the one thing that I do when I have jobs where, for example, I might get 40 long sleeve shirts and I have to make them into short sleeve, and so I've got to cut the sleeve off, and at the bottom of the sleeve, of course, there's buttons, and there's a little button in the placket. So what I do is I sit there while I'm watching TV and I unpick the buttons and put them in a bag, because I know that I might need them. So I've got, you know, for the smaller ones, I've got black, green and blue. Now, in this case, I'll use the white, and all I have to do is find, you know, the little placket button, which is that one there. So I'll need 2 for this job. Obviously I've got 9 there. So now you should have a with your sewing machine, you should have what's called an automatic buttonhole foot, and what you do with that is you pop it into there and you close it. These small buttons can drop down, but so there you have it. So I've popped that button in there. Now what that will do is that will regulate the buttonhole size. If you don't have this, then you could, you know, pop a pin there and a pin there for how long you want it, so that you work within that length. Every machine is going to be different when it comes to setting it up for a buttonhole. Now, I mean, some of you guys are going to have digital machines and some of you will have manual. So mine is kind of like a semi-manual, and I've already moved it across to the buttonhole section. And to do this, I'm going to make the zigzag stitch around just between 3.5 and 4, and I'm going to make the bottom one on my machine. That's what regulates how wide apart the zigzag is. So the top one is for the width, the bottom one is for how close or far apart it is. So I find that I have that between 0 and 1, you know, kind of like right in the middle there, and that tends to give me a really good spacing. So I'll take this off, and now I'll pop this in. Okay, so that mine just clicks on. So on my machine, I've just got to pull this little bar down, and that means that what it'll do is once it gets to a certain point, it'll come back. So when you're doing a buttonhole on a collar, obviously you're going to work on the right side, and because I've done so many of these for him, I'm going to put the section here between here and here, kind of like, so from there it's about, here's a pin, I'm going to start about there. Well, it'll be in the middle, so I'm going to start about there and you just go back, and then it'll come forward, and that'll be it. Okay, so pop that in, and like I said to you, if you know, doing buttonholes is just practice. Okay. See how that automatically stops? And back, and that's it. Now, how quick and easy was that? Okay. You don't want them to be too, you know, you don't want this to be too close together. Well, I guess it depends on the fabric, but this is a cotton, so it's not like it's going to fray or anything. Mine needs an adjustment every time. And that's it. It's done. Now, here's a tip for you when you're slicing your buttonholes. Grab a pin and pop it in the very end like that. Now what that means is that when you're slicing, you don't go too far because the pin's in the way. You need a nice sharp quick unpick, and see, it can't go any further than that pin, particularly if you've got a really sharp quick unpick, and you can accidentally slice it too much, and that would not be a good thing. So there you go, that buttonhole's done. Now all I've got to do is pop a button there for him, and it's finished. So that was it, quick and easy, wasn't it? And all I've got to do now is attach the button to there, and it's done. So a couple of tips using the pin, understand how your machine works with your buttonhole, and don't do your zigzag too close together when you're doing something like this on a collar, because it'll just kind of spread out the fabric probably a little bit too much. So what can happen is the shirt that you're going to put a buttonhole in has got one of these in there, unlike the other one that just slips straight out. So there's two things you've got to do. You need to just unpick the seam on the corner, So just do one stitch at a time. So once you do one, then you know it gives you, it starts to kind of unravel a lot easier, or unpick a lot easier. I'll just do one corner to show you. Okay, so that should be enough. So I've got to restitch that later. And then at the back, I've just started to unpick it. You just want to slide the unpick in and, you know, start by just getting one stitch and then get the second stitch and so on. And then because you've now unpicked this, you can just push it and it'll come out like that. So there's only two things you'll have to do to finish this, and that will be just to stitch that across there like that, and to stitch that like that. Now we can do the buttonhole. So now all I've got to do is just restitch that. Try and go with the same stitch length if you can. It's quite small. Not quite. More. Yeah. Happy altering!